Yes, because he has he's a Democrat, and he's got hook, line, and sinker with John Podesta on this one, I believe. We're joined now by Brad Bauman, who's a political strategist. He's a Democratic strategist and a partner at the Pastorum Group. Brad, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So let me get your take on all of these claims about Russian hacking. Does it have legs?
Yeah, I'm really thinking that not only does it have legs, but it's something that all Americans really need to be concerned about. I'm starting to think that this may be the most credible and important assault on American democracy since 9/11, Mark. And Democrats, Republicans, independents, it doesn't matter. We need to be taking this very seriously.
So taking it seriously is one thing, but suggesting that it somehow changed the outcome of a United States election seems to be taking it a little too far. Do you disagree with me on that?
Here's what I'll say. The first thing is that I personally don't know and can't say whether or not Russia hacked our election or whether they were able to influence the election at that level. But what I can tell you is that the spread of misinformation, the spread of what they've done, that the hacking and the way that they've intentionally tried to manipulate public opinion proves to me that they had a dog in this fight, and that we as Americans, regardless of the outcome of the election, need to be very cognizant of the fact that foreign governments like Russia are trying to get us to fight with one another and are trying to influence our national politics.
So then explain that a little bit to me. What is the misinformation in your opinion? I mean, I'm well aware of the WikiLeaks. A lot of that because of the direct hacking of the Democratic National Committee, obviously emails that were released that the DNC was embarrassed about. But where does the misinformation come in your opinion?
In my opinion, what this comes down to is the entire weird environment that you and me and all of the American voters are dealing with right now. We've got a mainstream media that most people don't necessarily believe. We've got this glut of information that's assaulting us at all times. And hey, let me tell you something. As a Democrat, I'm going to cop to the fact that I have been part of the problem. I'll read something that sounds true to me, and I may not even read the full story, and I put it right on Facebook for all of my friends to see. And we got to kind of take a step back from that a little bit, because what's happening here is that environment where we're all at each other's throats and that we're looking for signs and looking for stories that, cement our worldview. It's being used by Russians with a grin and a nod and a wink to push us apart from one another.
Yeah, I guess so. It kind of gets back to this fake news argument, though. I mean, politicians have been putting out disinformation about their opponents for years. I mean, I don't think that's anything new. What I've heard recently, the allegations about fake news strike me that they're targeting specific news outlets and trying to suggest that if you only get your news from this outlet, you're not getting the truth.
Well, I don't want to target a specific outlet, but I have a personal story that I've been involved with that is a part of this kind of fake news, manipulated news thing. I'm very close with the family of Seth Rich, who, of course, was a murdered DNC staffer in Washington, D.C. And the amount of conspiracy theories that had propelled Seth and propelled the family into the spotlight was really hurtful to the family, and ultimately there's no resemblance to the reality. The idea is that, Hillary Clinton and people behind Hillary Clinton had something to do with the murder of this poor young guy who was trying to make a change in our country was just ridiculous. That's the environment. That's what's happening. And that's the thing that we need as Americans to come together and actually say, you know what? Let's give Americans of any political stripe the benefit of the doubt that we're all in this together and that we're not going to allow foreign governments to manipulate us and have at each other's throats.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I'm familiar with that story, and I certainly heard some of the theories that he died suspiciously and that sort of thing. I dismissed that personally, but just let me ask you then, because as a Democrat, do you honestly believe that the voters of this country were swayed by the DNC hacks, if it was the Russians, to the point that that's why Hillary Clinton didn't get elected? Do you believe that?
I believe that there are people, that there are voters who were swayed by this. And actually, well before the CIA released this information, I was out there yelling to whomever would listen. I was on national TV. I was on Fox Business. I was on Fox News saying, we cannot lose sight of the fact that Russia illegally hacked us, that they're using this information for political purposes, and that we just need to take a step back and think about that for a second. So, yeah, I do believe that some people in our country were swayed by this, and that all of us as a country were duped by this action by Russia.
But Brad, do you think it's enough to question the outcome of the election? I guess that's what I'm getting to. When I hear that somebody no less than John Podesta is now insisting that electors be given a classified briefing so they can determine how they're going to vote this week, to me, that harkens back to Hillary Clinton talking about Donald Trump being a threat to democracy.
There are two things that I'll definitely say. The first is that the bipartisan nature of the investigation that folks like Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan, whom I don't think in my entire political career I've ever stated are doing anything right ever. For the first time, I'm out here saying, wow, thank you guys. Thank you so much for taking this as seriously as it is. So I'm very heartened by that. Ask whether or not, and truthfully, to ask whether or not this had a significant enough influence on the national vote, I don't know. But I think it's worth us looking into, and I think it's worth having the electors hear what evidence is out there that you and I don't know about because we haven't gotten the intelligence briefing. Let's let everybody hear exactly what we know at this point so that we can make some informed decisions.
But what we do know is that at least the CIA and the FBI disagree on that conclusion.
Sure, because the question right now is motive. Nobody is questioning the facts of what Russia did, but they are questioning motive. And one thing that the CIA does have in their column on this is that there's credible evidence that the RNC was hacked as well, and none of that information seems to have made it out.
Well, Brad Bauman, Democratic strategist with a partner at the Pastorum Group, we will agree to disagree on that, but I appreciate you being a guest.
Thanks for having me.
What difference at this point does it make?
I had to play that. Yeah, so you see, Brad represents that group who they want to believe, they want to think there's some way that they can still overturn the outcome of this election, and they're hanging their hat on these emails that were hacked from the Democratic National Committee, and there's now it's a constitutional crisis. Sorry, Brad, but we even heard the president say in that Comedy Central interview last night, we've known about this for months. We've known the Russians were out there, and we found no evidence that they tampered with any voting machines or anything like that. So even the president doesn't think it changed the outcome of the election. But there's definitely desperation out there on the part of some of these Democrats. I will try to get some of your phone calls coming up. But I have to tell you, when we come back, we're going to switch gears a little bit, and we're going to talk